so that we could finish talking about what we were talking about. Which when you're an enlisted dude, you don't make generals wait. But I was on a lot of ketamine, so it was sweet. But then Sturgill had it on his own accord to like donate to the foundation. So this little tour going on that coincides with the actual album release is donating to the Special Forces Foundation. So that helps Gold Star families, which are the families that remained of the friends that got killed on this trip. So there were 4 Green Berets and 2 EOD techs, and so that money's going to them, and that's what I care about. I'm alive. I don't have any legs below my knees for those that can't. Well, you can't see my legs on the video anyway, and I don't have my testicles either. So that's a different set of challenges. But I don't care about getting taken care of other than the normal Army processes, but I want them to get taken care of from the foundation. So I'm grateful to have these guys as friends now. They're awesome. They're amazing musicians, but amazing people. And then I'm grateful to be here and just to push that out. So people that are coming to the shows, all that money goes to the foundation, and then people can go on the foundation's website, which is specialforcesfoundation.org. And yeah, I appreciate it.
That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's
man.
really, really, really cool. That's really cool that you're doing this, and thank you for coming here and telling everybody this. You know, this is it's a great way to help out, and your music, you know, to connect it to that. I think that's just a fucking incredible thing. It's really cool. You know, when you were sending me the text messages telling me that you were going to the hospital, you know, it's very touching.
It was like, yeah.
Yeah, you were, you know, you could tell you were seriously moved by this. And, you know, for someone like you who truly understands the consequences of war, like the physical consequences in a way that none of us will understand, you know, it's very, not just, it's brave of you to talk about this, but it's also, it's so valuable for everybody that hasn't served to understand what it really is. So thank you for that.
Well, I always say I really like combat because I was in a lot of it, relatively speaking. Bunch of guys have been in way more combat. Bunch of people have treated more casualties. I'm a medic, but I was in a fair amount. Almost got killed on the first trip a good handful of times, and then so I just don't like the war aspect when you see your friends get killed and you're stuck in a hospital bed on top of all this stuff that's, you know, I didn't shit for a week. I pissed blood for a week. I've had tons of nights of excruciating pain. That's the life of an amputee, or there are guys that are worse than me, so I'm just grateful for having what I have. And yeah, that's the beginning of it. Like, especially on ketamine, when you're going through all that and you're just like, I was telling like the people that took the trash out in the room, like, hey, I'm grateful for you, brother. Like, right on, brother.
What is ketamine like after a catastrophic injury like that? Does it relieve the pain? Does it just put you in another dimension?
So ketamine is an NMDA.
Pull this sucker right.
Yeah. And ketamine is an NMDA antagonist in the brain. So it essentially is a dissociative. So the way that it feels, because we learned this in class as a medic and everything, but the way that it feels is kind of, it takes your perspective, and it's like, it always felt like a whirlwind if I was getting a push of it. But it's like you're starting to get your vision masked, and you're still there, but you're dipping into like subconscious because you're still conscious. Because unconscious would mean that you're like, you pass out and you cannot have a gag reflex depending on how unconscious you are. So ketamine, I would close my eyes and immediately trip the most insane balls that you could imagine, and open them, and I'd be back in the room, and I'd be like, what the fuck?
Whoa.
And then a friend of mine, when I left my first rotation, he was an Air Force CCT that got blown up in the same village I had a few casualties in. He stepped on ID. He's an above the knee, some missing fingers, but when he was on ketamine, when he was awake and looking around, he'd see the walls on fire. And then there'd be like women, like white, pale skin in the corners, peeling the skin off their back. And he was like awake. And I was like, dude, that's
shit.
Like whatever. I don't know. It must be like someone's psychology when they go in, like set and setting type thing. But I was in it when I got a lot of ketamine. My legs are blown off. I'm getting worked on. I'm telling dudes how to treat me. I cut my own shirt off, and then I get the ketamine, and I'm like in and out, and I see these visions back and forth. And like I was convinced there were two distinct moments. I was like, I'm not going to make it, and had that conversation. So, and what's surreal about this right here is that you were talking to him on this show, and you guys talked about combat medics, and you were like, I just sing in key, and I was like, right on, they're talking about me, and then I got all kinds of jacked up. Makes you appreciate life, and I've gone through a huge development last year through depression, and then this year after this blast of like being grateful and like doing introspection and communicating and having empathy for other people and being a compassionate human, which General Mattis has told us, a group of us on the way back from my first trip. It's like, don't let this experience of war make you a more hateful human being because people haven't experienced it. Allow yourself to go through post-traumatic growth and become a better human being and treat other people like you want to be treated. And I would add on to that, which came from Tim Ferriss, treat yourself the way you treat other people too.
That's not a side of Mattis that you ever hear in the press, huh?
I suppose not.
I
But
think that would be very valuable for people to know that he thinks that way. It's a very powerful way to view this the inevitable consequences of war.
that started scraping me off the bottom to focus on that after that trip. Yeah.
That ketamine shit is a weird one because a lot of people do it recreationally, and apparently they blast off and go into other dimensions and shit, and they go into K-holes. And
Yeah, I never did it. I never tried it.
I knew a dude who died from it. He was really into it. He's doing it a lot.
What happened?
I don't know.
Like an infection?
I know he probably was doing a bunch of other things as well, but he was getting treated for ketamine for addiction, and then he wound up dying.
You can dose the shit out of ketamine.
Yeah,
And
it doesn't kill you.
you can give a kid 300 megs of it, and they will fucking trip balls, but they're not going to die. It's like the opposite of all the other drugs.
I think he was doing other shit too.
Yeah.
I think the ketamine was just something he was treated for. I think he was doing a bunch of speed and stuff too. Which ketamine was originally isn't it a cat tranquilizer or something like that?
They give it to my wife's best friend's a veterinarian. She definitely is like jacking animals with ketamine on the road.
It's increasing now in like civilian hospitals, but started as like a veterinarian drug, which, I mean, it works great. And you combine it with some other stuff.
Do you know who John Lilly is?
No, sounds familiar.
John Lilly was this scientist that he was a pioneer in interspecies communication. He did all his work with dolphins, and he was also a big acid freak. And he would take acid and try to communicate with dolphins. He would even allegedly give dolphins acid. He was a part of his long-standing program to try to get dolphins to talk to him. But one of the things he invented
Why is there not a movie about this guy?
There is, Altered States.
No way.
Altered States is based a lot on John Lilly because he invented the sensory deprivation
Does
tank.
he give the dolphins acid in the movie?
No, because
I don't
it just was loosely based on him because in the movie the guy experiments with a bunch of different types of sensory deprivation tanks, and everybody knew that this guy, he was a legitimate doctor, a brilliant guy, but he was also a ketamine freak. And one thing he would do was he would take intramuscular ketamine and then get into the sensory deprivation tank.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a double
that'd be
whammy.
sweet.
Yeah, a double whammy. So is that stuff difficult to get off of, or do you have to worry about that? Is there a withdrawal symptom?
The issue would be with the pain. Like when you have something that's controlling some sort of level of pain, and then coming off of that, you usually will wean off of it.
But there's not a physical addiction issue?
I should know the answer to that definitively, but as a medic,
Yeah.
But I haven't heard of anything where it's hard to come off of.
They had you on other stuff way harder to come off of.
Oh yeah, I was on methadone.
Oof.
And Sturgill's friend Shooter and Duff McKagan came to the hospital, and Duff was like, methadone is worse than heroin, because those GNR guys were rocking it in the 80s.
Right.
But that was one week I dropped down 20 mgs instead of the 10, and it was like being a junkie. Like for 9 hours, I was just like rubbing my legs, like
Whoa.
because they're just lit up with nerve pain. It feels like there's daggers in your leg or some sort of electrocution, and you look like on a movie with like someone cracked out or something. I was just like rubbing my shit.
We used to see these guys that would come into the pool hall when I used to play pool in White Plains. They would come in. There was a methadone clinic down the street, and they were all heroin people. And my friend Johnny B would call them methadonians because they would come in. They all had like this like sort of like dull shuffle to them. They were all slowed down, and I could never understand it. It was like I was like, is this like a culturally like did someone agree? Did we make some sort of agreement like this drug's okay? It's got it's got some stamp of approval, so we're accepting that they have to get methadone every day, but they can't get heroin anymore. Why don't we just give them heroin? Like, how much different is the methadone? Does the methadone get them high?
Well, it's synthesized, so it's easier to control.
But does it get them high?
I didn't have any effect.
After a while, no, it's just fighting off the physiology.
Yeah.
So it just fights the physiology of.
They're not getting. No, you'll never get high like the first
But
time
it's a
you spike or like.
Potent narcotic.
Yeah.
For like the adverse effects.
But don't people have like the best effects with like ibogaine and things like that when it comes to getting off of opiates?
For kicking opiates, yeah. I mean, if you want to go through that, I would say, that would probably be your best bet. For a quick solution, if that's what you mean. Like,
but methadone's like it is actually bad for you, isn't it?
yes.
It fucks your. I didn't sleep. I didn't have deep sleep for 4 months. And I'd get in bed at 9, not fall asleep till 3 in the morning.
That fucks with everything too.
Yeah. It's a pretty shitty year.
Damn. And how long did it take to get you off of the methadone?
I mean, once you're off of it, the doctors were saying that it stays in your adipose tissue, which is your fat, for like 2 or 3 weeks. Because I'd have random nights when I was off of it and just get lit up with nerve pain and like getting hit with a hammer on my toes. So probably like 6 weeks of weaning that, and then I weaned another drug, Lyrica.
I mean, for you, it had to feel. I mean, because you were there at Walter Reed the whole time, you had to feel frustrated. But for somebody like the first time I came to see you, it was only a month after the blast?
At most, yeah.
So he was still in a lot of, more pain than I could even comprehend somebody being in, from nerve pain for how many surgeries on each leg?
It's close to 30 surgeries total, which
and
is a lot.
You
but
still
there's
had
guys
staples in
more.
your back too.
Yeah.
Before they taken. I mean, you could describe it. I was just like, how can anybody? And then he was still, as he said the first time we met, he was high as giraffe balls on ketamine. But like, I was profoundly impressed by even then, like how clear-headed and articulate, and this guy's obviously brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, you just through the fog and awareness of everything going on in the room, despite the pain, he was trying to pretend like he wasn't in. And then that place is full of guys like him, and then when I went back, it's like all new faces. These people. But then when I went back, the second time I went to see him was there for a couple of days, and it was like just in a matter of short time, it was leaps and bounds. He's in the gym on one leg, like fucking busting out 20 pull-ups and everything. It's just kind of like there's got to be something anything you can do to help in whatever way. And these guys, since I've known him, I've never once ever heard him ask for anything. His only concerns were like for the families of the guys that didn't make it, so it's just like really around an album release, if I'm going to have a bunch of attention on me, I thought it would be a good opportunity to put attention on what other people can do to help these guys and their families, because they're, the sacrifices is, especially sitting in these rooms and looking at these dudes, man, you can't, what do you call that?
Yeah. Well, I want to help. So after the show, let's figure out what we can do to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help. So help with the podcast, help with some comedy shows, maybe, do just whatever we could do.
I appreciate that.
Listen, I'm blown away by all this. As much as I think all these people are listening and watching, this is it's beautiful that you're doing this, man. And I think that mean, it's inspiring me to do something. I think it's probably inspiring a bunch of other people, and that's those things that people talk about. It's one thing that you might experience or hear in life that sort of changes your worldview and moves you in a better direction. Like this could be one of those things, you know.
Well,
you're a good man.
Well, I'm not fucking anything, man.
I'm just a dude.
Just a dude.
Well, you're just an awesome dude. All you guys.
But then Sturgill had it on his own accord to like donate to the foundation. So this little tour going on that coincides with the actual album release is donating to the Special Forces Foundation. So that helps Gold Star families, which are
experience.
Through the roof. Every night of this 9-part series, and we realized we had touched the pulse of the public in a way that he had seen these documents when he was in the Navy, and he's going to tell the world about it, then he's going to go away. Well, every time he told the story, the documents got bigger and bigger, and anybody who criticized Bill Cooper became part of the secret government, including me. So we do this third show with Lear, and he hints that he knows a guy who might be going to work out at Area 51 and knows something about alien technology. That guy turns out to be Bob Lazar, but Lear didn't give me the name at that time. A couple months later, I am anchoring the 5 o'clock news on KLAS, and we have a nightly or evening interview segment, 5-minute segment, live interview. Our guest doesn't show up, and we're scrambling to find somebody to fill that hole. And I thought about Lear. So I called him up, not knowing what had been going on in Lazar's life or Lear's life. And I said, hey, is your that UFO guy you told me about, is he around? Would he do an interview? Just turned out that Bob had been through the ringer, a lot of stuff going on in his life. He felt threatened. And he said, yes. We had to black out his face. We do this interview, and he spills the basics of the story. I worked out there at a place called S4. I saw 9 flying saucers in an underground base. This is technology that came from somewhere else. I'm in fear for my life. Holy cow, the phones start ringing off the hook. My news director comes rushing in, the station manager, is that for real? What's the deal on that? And we realized we had touched the pulse of the public in a way that I didn't really understand. We arranged to go meet Bob Lazar, my news director, Bob Stodall, and I, that following weekend, and put him through a paces where we would ask him questions about his background and how he got the job. And we spent a couple hours with him, and we walked out of that meeting thinking, holy shit, what if this is true? This is really risky for us as journalists. It's risky for our personal reputations if it blows up in our faces and we do this story, and it would really damage the reputation of our news organization, which is KLAS is a jewel. It's always been a leader in Las Vegas, one of the best TV news operations in the country. We're putting a lot on the line. Well, look, we decide, let's take our time. Let's look into this guy's story. And then in order to understand Lazar, we'd have to look at the bigger picture of UFOs. So I started a cram course on ufology, and I read everything. And I spent 8 months like cramming for a final exam that never happened. I read everything. I interviewed people. That same year, MUFON had its international symposium in Las Vegas, and there all the world's UFO people came right to me. I got to interview them, traveled around, went to Los Alamos. Lazar took us into the lab. We took cameras in there. He walked us around, waving to people. We didn't even have to stop for security. Took us into the lab like it was a rabbit going through its own burrow. He knew his way around. We were allowed to take a camera in there. We put those stories together, put them on the air in November, and man, it just went through the roof. Every night of this 9-part series, people got the audience got bigger, phones ringing off the hook, people calling, giving us information. Suddenly, it's on something called Paranet, which was sort of a precursor to the internet, and it was huge, and it changed my life for sure. I had no idea that there were so many people out there interested in the topic, and I was hooked. And I really got hooked on Lazar not only because his story, personally, I was interested in him. We became friends. I saw what happened to him after that live interview, and in the 7.5 months before we went and I revealed his identity. People were really messing with him. I mean, you cannot convey what it was like, how weird it was then, breaking into his house, leaving the windows open, messing with things in his home, breaking into his car, leaving the doors and windows down, just messing with his head.
And you think that was the government that was doing that?
Yeah, I do. I think so. And then, so I had put out a call to people, hey, I want other people to come forward.
This was before his identity was revealed.
Yeah,
we should explain
yeah,
this.
I am actively seeking information from the public. If you ever worked at Area 51 or S4, you know anything about this, you're at Nellis Air Force Base, reach out to me. So I started getting calls, and 6 people right in a row who had talked to me on the phone and offered to give me information were visited right after the call. One of them was a guy who did tax returns for people at Nellis Air Force Base, and he had got to know these guys really well and got information about crashes. There was a guy who was a golf pro at Nellis who had gone on road trips with officers and told him about this weird stuff out at Area 51 that seemed to be from somewhere else. He gets visited and told to shut up. There was a lady who worked in the court system. A cop told me about her, and I talked to her on the phone, and she had worked at the court system, but before she had worked for a company called Holmes and Narber, which is a defense contractor. And she said she sat in as a stenographer in these meetings and heard these conversations between the government contractors and Air Force officials about crashed saucers. And they would, after the meeting, they take the tape out of the typewriter and destroy it and take all the notes. And she agreed to tell me this story. It was just a tiny piece of the story. The next day, she's visited by these 2 guys in suits. They tell her, look, you are still subject to your security clearance. I hope you know that. And then they said, we know you traveled to LA to see your daughter, and we know she comes here. It's a big desert out there. It'd be terrible if something happened to either one of you. This lady is scared shitless. She didn't make that stuff up. So 6 people who had offered to give me information on the phone, one right after another, get visited, and it made me mad. It also made me mad that dealing with, trying to fill in pieces of Bob Lazar's life. Now, I know there's some gaping holes. I know it better than anybody. I've had to deal with it for 31 years. But I always thought if he worked at Los Alamos in classified projects in a scientific or technical capacity, then it would make sense that he could get hired into a program like S4 as somebody who thinks outside the box. Despite personal shortcomings or whatever, they might bring somebody like him in to help them crack a problem that they hadn't been able to resolve themselves. So I focused on Los Alamos. I knew he had been there. I talked to people who remembered him from being there, but the lab kept telling me, no record of him. He's never here. And then I showed him, well, look, I've got the Los Alamos newspaper. It's a small town paper. There it is on the front page, a front page story. Bob Lazar, physicist, Mason facility, Los Alamos lab. It's a story about his jet car. Nope, still have no records of him. And then I found his name in the phone book from the era when he was there. He's in the lab phone book. He had been hired by a company called Kirkmeyer, which is a company that's a headhunter that fills positions at Los Alamos and places like that. So great, I'll reach out to Kirkmeyer. They said, yeah, we hired him. Yeah, we've got records. Can I get it? Can I get his employment records that would show where he went to school, whatever information you guys had? Yes. A couple weeks go by, nothing. Couple more weeks go by, I call him again, I start writing him. I've got a stack of letters that thick. It went on for 2.5 years, and finally, by the end of it, they said he was never here. We don't have any records. That pissed me off. It made me mad, and I think that is really what got me hooked in the story, is that I was being jacked around by government and national facilities like that.
We should explain the Los Alamos thing, because the Los Alamos thing coincided with him doing work at MIT, right? Is that correct?
That's how he's explained it to me. Yeah,
and
right.
The way he explained it to me, I don't think I'm at liberty to say what the project was, because the project, the way he was describing it, is essentially internationally illegal, like what they were working on. And that's one of the reasons why he was saying, he explained what the project was. It sounded very feasible, also very evil. and then it was basically a weapon. And then he said that this was the reason why there was no actual record of him studying at MIT. It wasn't important that he got a degree. It was important that he understand the technical specifications of what they were attempting to accomplish.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
And, it's always been the most problematic part of his background. And it's where a lot of people in the Bob Lazar story, that's where they stop.
But the thing is, when you listen to him talk and when he describes things, it's very clear he's educated.
Oh, he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
But I had always told him, and Bob, you're my friend. I want to have a conversation with you about these claimed degrees, because I didn't believe that he'd ever sat down. In those days, you go to a college like MIT or Caltech and get a degree. You've got to take classes in something other than science. I could not imagine Bob Lazar taking an English lit class to save his life. But he is a brilliant guy. I'll give you an example. In April, COVID thing is raging. My wife and I are staying at home. We're getting packages delivered for food and things of that sort. I'm a little worried. They didn't know about contact, whether you can get it off of cardboard boxes or whatever. And I mentioned to Bob in a phone conversation, I'm thinking about buying one of these UV screener systems. He goes, wait a second, don't buy one. I think I've got the parts that I can make you one in my garage. And a week later, it arrives. This thing, he's got it in his garage, handmade, this big scanner with these UV things that works. He just whipped it up in his garage.
I'll remind you, you got the scanner. I got a laser gun.
Right.
You got a laser gun?
I did, man. It is super powerful. So it's like a handheld toy that he retrofitted with a superpower. So I'm like lighting shit on fire in my house.
So it looks like a handheld toy, but it's actually a real laser?
It's a toy with full noise, but he put a diode in there, and it's super powerful. Like it can light shit on fire. My wife hates that shit. So I got the laser gun.
You also got the flamethrower, though. Lazar made a flamethrower. This is before your buddy Elon made flamethrowers.
No comment on that.
Yeah, well,
it's a massive.
He made one. He made a flamethrower.
Massive.
Yeah, he's obviously a very intelligent man.
Yeah.
When you listen to him talk, there's no bullshitting going on. When he talks about talks about undeniable, concrete things, when it comes to science, when it comes to elements, when it comes to propulsion systems, he clearly knows what he's talking about. And the really confusing thing for people that are detractors is he really hasn't changed his story in 31 years. It really is the same story. And that's really hard to do. Even if you tell a true story, 31 years later, you get it screwed up a little bit. It's hard. Like when you're calling on 30, like if I had to remember things from 31 years ago, that's like I'm 1 year into stand-up comedy 31 years ago. I don't remember it. I barely,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you like, oh yeah, it was a Sunday night. And then my friend Greg go, actually it was Wednesday. I go, fuck yeah, you're right. It was Wednesday. Who was the host? We'll have, I don't know. It's a blurry slideshow. But Bob has been remarkably consistent. The only thing that he's vacillated on, we varied a little bit, is the whether or not he saw an alien or whether or not he saw someone who was looking at something that was the size of an alien, like a small figure, like whether or not they were trying to determine how large a creature would have to be to use one of those small crafts. Because the crafts were very small in terms of like for a human being. It was more like something that was built for a child. And he walked by a window and looked inside, and in some of the earlier discussions of it, he believed that he might have seen an alien. But he was really clear that he only saw it for literally a second as he was walking by, he saw something. And again, you know how the brain works in memory. You can really plant false memories. Everybody wants to pretend their memory is so good. Memories are terrible.
Well, Bob admitted from the beginning. Remember, with the first interview we did, I think it was June of '89. So it was a little after we did that live interview, but months before we went with his ID. And that was really, we recorded it in case something happened to him. He was afraid he was going to be killed. There were a lot of really weird things going on. And I was worried about it too. I wanted to get it on the record in case suddenly he disappeared. So we recorded this long interview, and always he downplays stuff like that. That's an example.
Yeah.
I saw something that was that size. I don't believe it was an alien. It was just a glimpse. Maybe they're messing with my head. He also admits that they did mess with his head, that he had to, they underwent some kind of hypnosis, that they made him drink this weird green liquid.
Probably LSD.
Well, maybe.
They said it was an allergy test. But yeah, I mean, but to your point, just real quick, is after 30 years, it's not that he changed his story. He's changed. So when I was interviewing him, he cracked the book back open with me. It was like he was saying, the science and technology is what I know. I had my hands on that. I can't attest to what I read in the documents. Yeah, I saw something for a brief millisecond through a fucking window, but I don't know what that was. So people have taken what he said and exaggerated it. Bob has always been skeptical of the things he didn't have his hands on, and I admire that. And he's changed as a human. As a human, he's matured. So now he's saying, okay, let me look at it rationally. I don't know what I saw through that window.
Right.
And I appreciate that. He's so straight.
Yeah, he's very straight.
Various scenarios have popped up over the years about why he came forward. There are people who believe he just made it up. He was trying to make money or he wanted attention. There are people who believe it's government disinformation to distract attention from something else that was going on out there. Or they believe both of them, which, they would seem to be mutually exclusive. Bob would admit that he had no business being there, that there were much more qualified people to work on those kind of things. Maybe he was a guy who thinks outside the box, who might give a new slant on trying to figure this stuff out that they had for decades and had not been able to duplicate.
We should explain that a little bit. The Los Alamos lab story was him. He put a jet engine on a Honda.
Right.
And it was a functional jet car that he built himself. So he was a legitimate propulsion expert. And again, like a super science nerd. Like where he got his education is what's weird, right?
I finally got an interview with the guy that wrote that article 2 weeks ago. So the guy, Terry English,
right.
Finally, after all this time, he called me back 3 years late. You know what I mean? We'd love to put him in the movie. And I said, look, here's the point. You said Bob Lazar was a physicist at Los Alamos. So how did you base that? You're writing a paper. And he goes, yeah, and it got picked up by AP News. He goes, if I had misrepresented that he was a physicist at Los Alamos, I would have been blackballed by everybody at Los Alamos. They take that very seriously. He was a physicist. I reported it. AP News picked it up. They repeated it. Not word one from anybody saying he wasn't a physicist at Los Alamos. It's little things like that when nothing Bob has ever said have I found out.
Yeah.
This is a real hot
Yeah.
rod.
and he did the story because the car was badass. When he fired it up,
When he has a history of this, he also made a hydrogen-powered Corvette later on. He's a wizard. He's a very smart guy.
He will admit to you that maybe he was picked for the job. They figured, all right, in case he blabs, we can discredit this guy like that. When we're done with him, there's things in his background. He likes to blow things up. He likes explosives. He had a pirate flag on his house at the time that I first met him. He liked machine guns. He had an illegal fireworks show that would go out in the desert every year that became a world-class event. He got into some legal trouble after he'd worked out there. So there's a lot of things in his life they could use to discredit him. But the people who still maintain that Bob was a disinformation plot, it was meant to distract attention out from something else going on out there. Whoever came up with that idea should be fired, because as a result of Bob coming forward with that story, Area 51 is now known all over the world. And I'm sorry, but the Bob Lazar version of the tale is the one that prevailed. It's known everywhere. It's been in movies and books and TV shows. It's launched 1,000 different products, like the hat. Las Vegas 51s. Our AAA baseball team became the 51s because of the Lazar story. The ET Highway is created and christened by our governor. That story, that version that he told, is now known all over the world, whether detractors like it or not. And if somebody was trying to distract attention away from something going on at Area 51, it failed miserably, because tens of thousands of people made the trek out there. Even today, 31 years later, every single day, there's somebody with binoculars or a scope or something looking for whatever is flying around out there. Every major news organization in the world, after giving me nothing but grief, has beaten a path to Area 51's door. All of them, they've all done it. And Bob's story about reverse engineering craft from somewhere else is now part of a much larger and current series of events that we can get into.
Yeah, and that story that he told when he was on the podcast here got phenomenal response. There were so many people that I talked to that were my friends who were skeptical about that shit. They call me up and go, hey, man, I'm starting to believe this is real. And I'm like, you should watch the documentary, and then you should watch the Commander Fravor interview where he talks about the Tic Tac UFO that they encountered off of San Diego. Because you're talking about a rock-solid military man with no shenanigans in his background who is telling a story about a craft that they cannot explain, doing things that defy physics and our understanding of propulsion systems. And quite a few people from that interview have completely changed their tune. Friends of mine who thought it was total horseshit have done a 180, and they're like, fuck, is this real? And then the New York Times story came out, of course, and the New York Times is showing all these images of these UFOs and these things that they can't explain that all exhibit very similar propulsion methods, or at least speeds that they can't explain. They move the same way. And there's legitimate people, legitimate scientists now that are starting to take this into consideration and say, okay, if this is from Earth, then there's got to be some sort of a program that has technology that's far beyond anything we knew was possible. How did they do that? Is it because there's some super geniuses that the government gets a hold of right when they're in college and they immediately ship them off to the desert and have them create this stuff? Or are we, in fact, encountering something like us from the future, or something from another place that has had a completely different path to technology? But it's not outside the realm of possibility. We're here. We're here sending videos through our phones to each other. You know, we're talking to people. It's being relayed through the sky. We're watching films that are instantly downloaded wirelessly from these servers. I mean, just the technology that we have right now is completely alien to anybody who was around in Roswell in 1947. From 1947 to 2020, in terms of the universe, is not even a half of a blink of an eye. And then, boom, things have changed so radically. It's not crazy to think that something from somewhere is far ahead of us.
Yes, so that's one of the big things. Getting Commander Fravor in that room with Bob was so cool, because Bob talks to whoever he's talking with. He helps you understand what he's saying. He can go into high specified detail on stuff, but typically he's just talking to whoever's there. When I got him in front of Commander Fravor, all of us and Matt, we were all in the room. It was amazing, because Commander Fravor saw it too. He saw something like Bob saw it. And the way that the craft, the Tic Tac, moved, it cannot be something that we have, because it was clearly gravitationally propelled. This is something they talk about. Commander Fravor saw it bouncing like a ping pong ball on the inside of a glass. The inertia, being able to go bum, bum, bum. And the coolest thing Bob said was, well, Commander Fravor, Dave, it could have been a subject to a time distortion. So you're seeing it one way. And they started talking about gravity amplification. It was just so cool to see them talk without an audience. What the fuck did Commander Fravor see? And Bob it's cool that when he can be calm and chill like that and just talk to another human.
And what's crazy is what Commander Fravor is describing is what Bob was describing, the propulsion systems of 1989 that they were working on.
Straight up.
It's the exact same thing. Even the way it turns sideways to move off.
Well,
that's
that's
exactly how he's describing it.
Yeah, that's
which is crazy.
The gimbal craft, we have this video and everybody says, oh, it's this, it's that, it's another plane, an FA-18. Dude, I've talked with a dude at Boeing now who he serviced these pods that it was caught on, the gimbal. That thing is self-rotating. It is a saucer-shaped thing that is rotating mechanically against the wind. They all know that this has to be a gravity-propelled program. We understand the science that it takes to do it. We can't replicate
Jeremy,
it.
pull that thing
Sorry,
close
I
to your
always
face.
do that.
It's okay. Just have it right up to your face.
We can't replicate it, right, with our material sciences, our best information at this time. We can't replicate this technology, but we do understand how it works, fundamentally.
Fundamentally, we just don't have the power to actually make it.
The material science even, just the actual physical material science, the materials it's made out of, and that's what's been in the news now, metamaterials, that there are materials from craft that we have. George will talk about that, but Lazar is parallel with what we're seeing today.
Yeah, and what's also really bonkers is in '89, he was talking about element 115. It wasn't even scientifically proven to exist until 2013. So in 1989, he was talking about this is science fiction. He's making things up. In 2013, they actually were able to create, for a brief moment, an element 115, which is this insanely dense element that they believe is perhaps the propulsion system for this craft.
It was always theorized, of course, element 115, but fabricating it
Yeah.
was an achievement. But yeah, if you're talking about being a winner every time history writes itself,
Right.
Bob it's insane.
He's back. Batting 100%. It's
100%.
crazy.
He knew there was a place called S4. There
Right.
had been no articles about that, no
Right.
mention. I looked for it. You know, I called Nellis Air Force Base and asked them, do you have a place called S4 anywhere on the range? Yeah. In fact, we have more than one. So can you tell me where they are? No. Can you tell me what goes on there? No. Well, there was a facility at Papoose. I think it was built into the side of the mountain, and you can see the dirt road on the old satellite photos. Why were people going down there? And then, of course, the video. He goes out there with his friends when he thinks he's going to be killed or he's going to disappear, and 3 weeks in a row. You've talked about it on this program.
Yeah.
And they videotaped it, and all the witnesses who were there have verified it. And it was not over Area 51. It was over Papoose, which officially has no facility. Nothing has ever been there. Bob knew a lot of stuff that he couldn't have known otherwise, and it's been proven over
And
the
he
years.
didn't know stuff that was disproven. He didn't come out. He didn't make up a bunch of crazy shit that you go like the William Cooper book, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that have speculated what that was all about. Whether William Cooper was just schizophrenic, whether he was writing some truths mixed in with crazy things so you could discount the truth. I mean, that is a real strategy that the government will employ if they know that information is going to get leaked out and they want to somehow or another discredit it. They'll connect it to really loony stuff that is absolutely not true. And you'll say, well, where'd you get that information? Oh, I got it from Behold the Pale Horse. Oh, Christ. Did you read all the stuff in that book? Right? I mean, so there's that thought, but there's none of that with Bob. With Bob, everything that he talked, it's so eerie.
Every time you turn over a stone, I think I'm going to find. At first, that's how George and I met. I thought I was going to see these guys cooked it up. That was my first entry point in 2012. I thought they cooked it up. Every stone you turn over, to be clear what George just said, Bob always said there's a place called Site 4. That was never mentioned anywhere at Papoose. He verified it in 1989 with head of public relations, who was a homie of his at Area 51. We then call 30 years later, and they give us the funniest fucking answer trying to not talk about Site 4. So he confirmed it. Every time you turn over a stone, man, every time, Bob's proven right, and it's annoying.
What was the experiment that he did with Element 115 that you guys videotaped?
It was
Is that available online? Can someone watch that?
No, it's
No?
it was called a cloud chamber test. So he had this stuff. I know people don't believe that it exists, and he never had any of it. They're welcome to believe it, but he had a piece of it. He
How
didn't
big was
steal
the
it.
piece?
The only time I ever saw it, it was in his lead shield round disc, and he had it for a while. It was in an
Was
office.
it because it's radioactive?
I think it's stable. I don't think it's radioactive. But that's how it was shipped to him.
so. It's in a
It was
lead
to
disc.
Protect it from bombardment because it will become unstable very quickly. That's how he says they used it in the craft. So yeah, he had it in a puck and
Like
George-
a hockey puck looking,
yeah, like a metal sandwich.
and it's lead.
yeah.
Okay.
It
So
was
it's in this thing.
Yeah, and I showed it, and I had it in the background in one of our stories, just sort of an inside joke.